sure 100,000 of these already exist somewhere, but I do this a lot with my own students. Maybe you are one of my own students. We just covered this and you wanted to review this information. We're just gonna hang out for a little while and talk about the names of all the notes that each fret of the guitar produces when it's in standard tuning, and just some techniques that I use for myself and with people to help memorize the fretboard and hopefully build towards having some freedom on the instrument. Musical notes, you might know, or maybe this is brand new, have letter names, and they are A through G. And as we move up this spiral staircase of notes, the letters repeat in different octaves. So it's kind of a mathematical reason for the repetition of note names. Right, those are all E's because that's a certain frequency, and then when you double that frequency musically, those function the same way. You probably already know 6 notes on the guitar if you've been able to tune your guitar. We've got E, A, D, G, B, and then a high E. A fun mnemonic device for remembering those is Eddie ate dynamite, goodbye Eddie. We can name all of the natural notes. Those are notes with just letter names, no funky flat or sharp names. By remembering this pattern that every note has a fret space between it. So we can name all of the notes on a single string by going alphabetically and remembering that there's a 1 fret space in between every note except for 2 pairs of notes. And this is really the only piece of information that you have to memorize, is that E, F are right beside one another, and B, C are right beside one another. So on the E string, we start with the note E, and right away on the 1st fret we have F, because that's one of our 2 pairs that are right beside each other. So next we'll move up 2 frets to G. That's called a whole tone. From G we start our musical alphabet over again. So we're going up once again a whole tone to the note A. From A we go up a whole tone to B. And here's another one of our 2 pairs of notes that are right beside one another. So from B we only go up a semitone, that's just 1 fret, to the note C. Then we go up a whole tone to D, and most guitars have these double dots at the 12th fret. And the reason for that is because this is your octave. This is where everything just starts repeating. So if you got to your 12th fret and you called it the same thing as your open string, you've probably done all right. So now you can pause the video and try this on your A string. Remember, you're going to start from the note A, and you're going to go up to the 12th fret, which should also be an A. Let's do that together now. We've got A, and we're moving up a whole tone, so we're going to skip the 1st fret and now move to B. So this is something that trips people up sometimes, where the open string and the 1st fret kind of feel like the same thing, because we're always thinking about these spaces where we put our fingers, but where the music's really happening is the starting point of the string, and as we move up the string, we're changing the starting point on the fret itself. So we're starting on A, move up a whole tone to B. Next we've got C. That's a semitone because that's one of our pairs of notes. Up a whole tone to D, whole tone to E. Here's our other pair with a semitone, whole tone to G, and a whole tone brings us back to A. Now try doing the same thing, going from your open D to the 12th fret, naming all of the natural notes and skipping all of the accidentals. We'll talk about those in a minute. You can pause now and try that. So hopefully you got D, whole tone to E, you moved up a semitone to F, whole tone to G, starting the cycle over again at A here, whole tone to B, semitone to C, whole tone to D. Now let's try something a little bit different. Hopefully you can recall what the 12th fret of the G string is. That's right, that's the note G. So this might be a little bit more challenging, but take your time with it. Pause and name all of the notes musically descending. So hopefully you made it all the way back down to G and found everything, but it's all right if you didn't. We have G, down a whole tone to F, down a semitone to E, down a whole tone to D, down a whole tone to C, down a semitone to B, a whole tone to A. That brings us back a whole tone to G. Now let's try something a little different. Let's play some accidentals. So we've been skipping a bunch of notes because those notes have two names and they're in relation to the other notes. So for instance, this second fret note on the B string here can be called C sharp or D flat. The same is true for all of those in between notes. If the context where you run into that note is that you raised the note, it's called by its sharp name. And if you lowered the note, it's called by its flat name. Sharp means one semitone higher than, and flat means one semitone lower than. So here we can run through all the notes on the B string, ascending, naming all of the accidentals by their sharp names, like so. We'll have B, C, C sharp, D, D sharp, E, F. Notice our semitones, B, C, E, F, are still where they are because there's no note in between them. After F we get F sharp, G, G sharp goes up to A sharp, that takes us back to B, that's the 12th fret of our B string, we get our octave. Now let's try playing all of the chromatic notes descending on the high E string. So we'll start at our octave, the 12th fret, E, and then we're going to go down just a semitone and call this E flat. A semitone takes us to D, down a semitone to D flat, down a semitone to C. B and C are beside each other, so semitone takes us to B, B flat, A flat, G, G flat, F, E. Now why don't we pause and try going down the B string from the 12th fret to the open string, naming everything by its flat name. So the chromatic notes by their flat names on the B string will be B, B flat, A flat, G, G flat, F, E, E flat, D, D flat, C, B. Now you can pause and play all the notes on the E string and practice naming them by their sharp names. This should give you E, F, F sharp, G, G sharp, A sharp, B, C, C sharp, D, D sharp, E. So a good first step is just running the natural notes up and down, the sharp notes up and down, and the flat notes up and down every string. Just getting that formula drilled into your memory with the B, C, E, F being right beside each other and the accidentals being between all of the other notes. Once that's second nature, then you can start looking for landmarks to help you memorize these notes and recall them quickly in the moment while reading music or communicating with other musicians. So we already have our first 6 landmarks, which were our open strings. And now we have our 12th fret landmark, which is the same note as the open string. Say someone says play a D on the low E string. You don't have to go E, F, G, A, B, C, D. You can remember 12th fret is also an E, and just going down a whole tone takes you to D, like that. Another landmark, it's a little more complicated because it's not a straight line, but it's not that tough, are the tuning notes. You might have noticed that as you're moving up the fretboard, eventually you come to a note that bears the name of the next open string. On the E string, you have A here on the 5th fret. On the A string, you have D here, right? Same note on the 5th fret. On the D string, you have a G on the 5th fret, just like your open G. Here's the one spot where it gets a little bit weird. On G, you have G, whole tone to A, whole tone to B, and you have your next note here on the 4th fret. That's the one thing you have to remember with that. I call it the tuning landmark. After that, on the B string, you have an E on the 5th fret once again. So here, you have your E, A, D, G, B, E, and then you have A, D, G, B, E, A. The next landmark you'll run into in a lot of songs is the adjacent string, octave. So that's up normally 7 frets on the next string. So here we have an E, and then on the A, you have A, B, C, D, and your octave E. And you'll run into a lot of stuff like that. So here you have E, octave E on the 7th fret of the A string, A, octave A on the 7th fret of the D string, D, octave E on the 7th fret of the D string, and here we have that different interval. So we have G here, and our G is just up 1 fret higher on the B string. And lastly, B and B are sort of back to normal here. So just to wrap things up, one last helpful little shape that you might want to observe here is this octave on every other string thing. So for instance, we can do this with F, right? So here we have F on the E string, and 2 strings over, 2 frets up, we have the octave F. And then 2 strings over, 3 frets up, we have the octave up from there. And if you know some scales, you can kind of practice connecting those octaves with a scale. And then you have this, remember our 7 frets up on the next string right here. You have that same shape actually of 3 octaves, F over here, here, and here. And since this one's on the 13th fret, you're gonna have that there. So once you've learned them all in order, going up and back down, now you can pick a note, and maybe you do 3 each day in a session, and you find 1 of every note on each string, or as many as you can. So for instance, you can pick a note, G, and find your G here, G, an octave up, right? So 12 frets higher. Another thing you'll want to observe is the other dots, right? So not every guitar is like this. I picked this one because it has the most kind of average dot setup. Some don't have the 3rd fret dot, some have a 1st fret marker, but one thing that they usually do, and especially they try to keep these ones on the side consistent. Those are the ones you should be looking at anyway. A lot of guitars will just have some sort of fancy picture on the front, but they'll still have the dots on the side. So you want to get familiar with where your dots are, and not just which fret that is, but which note that is. So we're going to try to find every G. We've got G here on the 3rd fret, and then this 15th fret dot mirrors the 3rd fret, right? We've got a G here on the A string. You might need to find that by going from your 12th fret A and working your way down to G right there. And then you might try to use the dots. If you have a 24 fret guitar, you'll have another set of double dots, most likely, about up here. A lot of guitars have a lot of different amounts of frets, right? So if I want another G here, I gotta bend that. So we don't need to find that G. We got G here and here, open G, 12th fret G, 8th fret G here, that one there. And then once you recall those, you can, it's good to know these shapes, but you don't want to rely on them. We've got this here, we've got that, and play all of that same note on every string, and then move up to another note. A good way to feel like you're randomizing the notes you're finding is to maybe move through the cycle of 4ths or 5ths. So if you don't know what that is right now, for now we can just call it going up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 frets. That's a perfect 4th, right? So now you can find, after you found all of your G's, you can find all of your C's. Play around with that a little bit every day and start looking at the songs that you're already playing and think about which notes you're playing. If you're already an experienced guitar player and you've been learning from tabs or from tutorials online, right? You can just look at what you're doing and unpack it. That's one of the best ways to understand it. Anyway, I hope you found this helpful. I hope it inspires you to practice. Let me know in the comments if there's anything else you'd like to talk about, any musical ideas or songs. I'd love to hear about it. If you have any feedback on this video or questions, let me know. Thanks.